Hello and welcome everyone. This is Taco Movie Talks. You are here with Taco. We got ourselves a solo episode, a November wrap up for some movies that I've watched this month and yet to cover, whether it be because didn't watch them with a guest and just kind of watched on my own. So we got a solo episode here. I appreciate you all checking out this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out the audio version on Spotify. But, we got a lineup of some really heavy-duty movies here. The most recent one that I have watched is After Hours by Martin Scorsese. I'm a huge Martin Scorsese fan. For anyone who's watched the top 25, he was always the director I considered to be my favorite. And I think this script kind of allowed Scorsese to show off some of the skills that he has shown off in his other films in a more simplified manner. But altogether, I thought the screenplay was spectacularly written, just how it would kind of build up plot lines and then tie them together later on. It wasn't my favorite Scorsese, but certainly a very solid outing. I rated it slightly below the average. I put it at a 3.5, and the average score is a 4, so I mean, I think that definitely says a lot. And these are Letterboxd scores. Goodfellas is my favorite movie of all time. For that, Scorsese is always going to be minted as a golden god, so to speak. But this one, it was not my favorite, but very, very good. And I would recommend. And I think it, again, is a really compelling story, but it's kind of simplified, and it's out of genre for him in a way. I know he doesn't only do crime films, but that is definitely one of his strong suits, and this is kind of just like a wild, crazy story that you would hear from a friend. So it was really neat in that regard, and I think Scorsese, in my mind, is one of those people who can keep a pace going, and this wasn't his shining example of that. I think there's other movies like Goodfellas, like Wolf of Wall Street, where he pushes the pace at such a level that it barely feels like there's time for you to come above water and grab a breath. This isn't quite at that pace, but there's very, very little slow spots at all. So ultimately a good watch. Next, RoboCop. This is like a quintessential 80s action film. It's freaking awesome. A little bit of sci-fi sprinkled in there, and really cutting commentary. And it kind of just shows how, the average man is usually the one that gets pinched because there's crooked people at the top of the food chain, or not food chain, but societally, the people who are in high positions can abuse their power to make a profit. And they almost kind of attack from the opposite side of the field as criminals do, but ultimately are kind of accomplishing the same goal. And it leads both citizens and civil servants, like, in the middle to either clean up the mess or we're the recipients of the damage that is done. But it was really cool, and, obviously, we don't have robotic police now, but it does show society's, we're trying to cope with high crime, and It's not. It's trying to poke fun at maybe the crazy solutions that we would have to come up with because of how corrupt and how crime ridden some places have become. But the design of RoboCop was super awesome. It's kind of hard to, it makes the actor, no, it gives him like this physicality, because the suit's so, intimidating and bulky and whatnot. Obviously, I'm not the first one to think this. Having Red Foreman be the bad guy was definitely something, and then you you really see how skinny his freaking neck is in this movie. I guess in that 70s show, he must have thickened up his neck, because he looks like he could take a left hook to the head and it would just fall off. So definitely a different look. He definitely put on some weight, like 10 years later or whenever that 70s show began filming. But he played the villain really, really well. It was like scarily well, which I think makes it even more impressive how he can kind of come off as a lovable hard ass in that 70s show. But I gave that film a 4 out of 5. Really solid film, and one of those quintessential action films, like I said. Up next, we have The Holy Mountain. This is really unique, really artistic, and creative. Now, the plot, it just kind of serves to, it's all, everything is just ripe for consumption with this film. Not only does almost the entirety of the film just look visually appealing, it's so uniquely done. There's so many unique sequences, literally just actions being taken that are unique. And then you feel like you're walking through an art exhibit with this film, which is quite the experience. I mean, there's not too many films like that off the top of my head. It's one of the few films that I have seen that is like that. And then you kind of get commentary on societal commentary as well, where, you have kings of industry who are just really kind of taking advantage of society in one mean or another, and they're all kind of messed up characters, but interesting nonetheless because they're so wacky. And I really love how this dystopia, which I would say in quotation marks, because it definitely seems like not a great society, but it's not like, I guess, on the urge of falling apart, but it's like it's everything taken to the extreme, kind of critiquing capitalism and consumerism, I would expect, or how companies are exploiting our, consumer nature, and like all the heads, the 9 people who make up the people who are going on this journey to the Holy Mountain. It's really cool. The ending was I would say I'm very neutral on the ending, because the whole film was just a rigmarole, a crazy. It was a smorgasbord of just like absurdist, surreal movie making that just felt like nothing you have watched. And it was probably one of the only suitable ways to end it, but did I love it? I'm not sure. Now, obviously, I guess were rumors that Ringo Starr was going to be, I guess the main protagonist, or the character that I think we follow the majority of the way through. That would have been neat. And I guess the only reason he did not join this film is because he didn't want to get his fanny wiped. on on camera, and I respect that. I respect that decision. It definitely would have fit in, not the fanny wiping, and when I say fanny, I mean buttocks, and nothing more sinister than that. But the whole feel, that artistic, wild, nearly psychedelic, bordering on psychedelic experience definitely feels like it would have fit in with the Beatle-esque vibe, I would say. That's my take. Do with it what you will. But it was a good movie nonetheless. 4 out of 5. Now, I do want to watch Hodorowski. I want to watch more. I think El Topo might be the next one I watch. Although he has, is it Sangre Sonat or something like that? The horror movie that he has, I've also had high on my watch list. So comment down below if you would like to see a Hodorowski video covering a couple of his movies, because I would totally be down. He has such a unique and creative style, and also he was working on a Dune project, and when you see this movie, man, it makes you wonder, like, what the hell would that have been like, and how spectacular could it have been? I really do think he could have accomplished something great with that, but we'll have to just kind of use our imaginations for that. Next up, these two I had wanted to do a video on, and I just could not hold off anymore. I had to watch these films. Huge fan of Kurosawa. They were his samurai movies in color, which, man, can he just put beautiful, beautiful shots in the picture with color. It honestly, what he was able to do with black and white was amazing. But with color, man, it just felt like he was able to transcend something just and create masterpieces. Now, I will say, I have Seven Samurai still as my favorite Kurosawa movie, my favorite war movie for that. And I do stand by that, just because that felt very much like the epic of epics. It just felt like the definitive movie that checked every box. The plot was so strong. The performances were right on, and the action set pieces, which Kurosawa is a master of, were just exquisite. These films are just a hair below that, and honestly, I think the common consensus is that Ran is the superior film. And I could be swayed by that, and I don't know if I could make the strongest of arguments, but my personal viewing, Kagemusha was the better of the two. And that's like, they are both great. So it's not like Ran was just a lot worse. It just I just slightly preferred Kagemusha. The dream sequence was amazing. The hilltop shots were really, really great. And I think what really set it over the edge, while those two things do kind of stand out, and Ran was a lot more straightforward and didn't do so much of like these dream sequences with like I think a painted sky for the most part, and those hilltop shots where the sky just looks magnificent. Those things kind of help contribute to that. But also, I think I preferred the story just a hair. So, I mean, those three things were enough to just kind of like solidify that as the number 2 film. And the magnum opus being Seven Samurai, man, I would have to watch them like in really close proximity to one another to be able to tell, like, did Kagemusha edge it out? Right now, I can't quite say that, but it was damn good. And watching it, I was like, this is an amazing movie. Watched Ran. The story was quite great, and obviously, well, not obviously, but you know, from reading the summary, it was based on a Shakespearean work, and it was a really well crafted, kind of intricate storyline where there was multiple kind of character motivations that played into where the story went. That was awesome. The kind of simplistic nature of Kagemusha, maybe in the essence of just kind of really taking this character's journey and just going in on it, may be the reason that Kagemusha stood out as a story that I like just slightly more than Ran. But the complexity of Ran is definitely one to behold, and it's really interesting. I think that's where a lot of people will lie. But the storming of the castle at the beginning was just amazing cinema. There's only a few films that have those types of moments. Both of these films have it, where there's just like, you are just lost in the movie and amazed by what's going on. That castle storming scene was it for me. And quite frankly, right now, it's Akira Kurosawa, like, all by his lonesome at the top. There's just no one who's close. But there's still a lot of films that I need to see. But just going from an average rating standpoint, it's not even close. I mean, it would take multiple movies by some of the top rated directors, or, you know, yeah, I'm going to have to watch a lot more before I think I come off of that. And I definitely want to watch more. The only thing that bums me out is I think I've exhausted maybe the majority of his samurai films. There's only a few more, if that. So I think Redbeard is one, and I definitely need to see that. That's another one that people really, really like. I don't know if it's has the type of grand battles that this one has. So I don't know if it's also going to be a 5 out of 5 like these two are. But nonetheless, a lot more Kurosawa films that I need to watch. And I was talking about Scorsese. I mean, his rating went down with After Hours. So in my book. And not that movie was bad, but just all the ones I'd seen prior were so highly rated that a 3.5 actually brought the rating down. But enough of that. We got some horror movie sequels now. We got Terrifier 2, the 2022 release. My memory of Terrifier 1 was, I remembered it being pretty good. And I had rated it a 3 out of 5, but I remembered it just a lot better than that. To where I was like, this must be like a strong 3, like a borderline 3.5, 3. And 2 is like a mid-tier 3 for me, where it was like, there was a lot of creativity with it. You could really tell that they were just going balls to the wall, no brakes, all gas. And like I was talking to Ethan about this on our director episode, And he said they didn't really tie together or really complete any plot point that they brought up. They had a lot of kind of cool premises for like a side plot or a subplot, and just didn't bring them to fruition. And when I think about it, that's correct. They brought up some like this dark fantasy type thing, and I understand they want there to be a sequel, and I think it got greenlit, and I'm all for that. I love the creative nature of the director. I love Art the Clown, the character, and they had a bigger budget, and you can tell in the special effects, but story-wise, it just maybe he had kind of, used up all the whole tank on the first one, and then was like, all right, well, I have to do something to breathe new life into this. So, have to take a story that had kind of completed itself in the first, revive it in the second, and leave room for a third. And it did all those things. But I prefer the first over this one, which I do have to say, if you love gore and you want kind of a popcorn movie, this is it. It's really good. And I do encourage horror fans out there. I mean, if you haven't already seen it, I would definitely recommend to see it, especially if you love gore. If you love gore, you're going to love this film. And if you like Art the Clown is absolute dynamite in this. It is, that's like a master class of how to play a villain. Now, it's a really specific character, but I mean, Art the Clown is tops. He makes the movie. If they didn't have as talented a lead as Art the Clown, this movie, I mean, it wouldn't have been made, clearly, but there would have been just nothing to really sink your teeth into, because some of the acting is subpar. The main protagonist is good. Art is just the best, and clearly the best. And knowing that he's going to be in another scene is what kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat. But 3 out of 5 for that one. Next, we got Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. This was awesome. This is kind of like, hey, you get that fat check from the first one. This low-budget movie just balls out and makes money. This is probably the way to handle it. And also, one introduced so many questions that were worth answering, and this dives into the mythology and into the lore of Hellraiser, the Le Marchand box, and I butchered that. But I'm reading the book. This story is just, it's engrossed. I'm engrossed in it, and I love the story. I read Hellbound Heart, reading Scarlet Gospels now. Just really can't get enough of it. My dad's a huge fan. He's the one who kind of got me into Hellraiser, but I just never watched the full second one. I had seen the first one, like a lot of the pieces of it, to where I knew the story basically, and then fully watched it a couple times now. Hellbound Heart, I had seen just a few scenes, and it didn't seem like super duper compelling, but watching it you would love it if you had intrigue in the background lore of it all. And it doesn't answer all the questions, but it just gives you a taste of what this world is. New Cenobite, which is super dope. The Dr. Cenobite is freaking amazing. And then Julie, I think her name is, it's the mother, or I think maybe stepmother in the first one. She's a tremendous villain, and she gets some good screen time in this one. Pinhead's, he is less impactful in this one than in the first. The first, they just fed him some lines that were freaking iconic. It was just like every other line from his mouth was like a quote that the movie is kind of remembered by now, or like one of the sayings that Pinhead is really known for. This one, not so much, but his shocking imagery is still there. He's still very much a part of this film. I think 3 really leans more into Pinhead's character being the secular kind of focus point of the movie. This one doesn't suffer because of that, though. Everyone loves Pinhead. I do as well. Would the movie have benefited from more of him? Perhaps, but I gotta say it held it together quite well without just completely leaning on him to carry the movie, a la Terrifier 2. With all these things being said, I prefer, I think, just ever so slightly, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2 to Hellraiser 1, because the in-between, like, you get so much more into the lore. 1 is just a great setup for me wanting to explore this world more, and 2 lets you explore it a bit more. So, from that perspective, I prefer 2. Now, I think this is the last pair of movies that we have. Let's just take a quick looky-loo. Yes, the last 2 we're going to be going over on this November wrap-up. 2 war movies. All Quiet on the Western Front. Solid, bleak movie. They do so much right to the costumes, the setting, like set design, I guess. And man, do they really capture like all the bleak moments of what made World War I just such a pit of despair, honestly. And the ending was really, really, really solid. Now, performances weren't bad. This movie like brings you into that world. It feels like it really lets you have a suspension or not. No, you don't have to suspend your beliefs. It makes you feel like engrossed by this film. The one thing that worked against that was the dubbing. Now, if this wasn't dubbed, and I watched this movie with my dad, and that's important because had it not been dubbed, would he have watched it? Probably not. Would he have watched the 2.5-hour movies where he had to read closed captioning or subtitles the whole time? Definitely not. It makes it accessible to more people, and I think there's probably an option to watch the film with subtitles in its original German. That might do more for it, because the dubbing, when you notice it, it takes you out of the film when there's so many factors that you can tell there's a ton of time and effort being poured into to make it feel so realistic. That's my only critique, really. Was the storyline as compelling as a movie like 1917? I don't know about that. I as far as ratings go, I give 1917 the edge. I think the story and how it lets you progress through the film in 1917 gets the edge. Now, ending-wise, All Quiet on the Western Front stuck with me from that end. So I'd have to say the ending and how bleak All Quiet on the Western Front was just top notch. It felt like it had so much kind of going on, like you're going through the phases of this war in the different mindsets. You're getting a real full scope of it from All Quiet on the Western Front. And all the little wrinkles that aren't front of mind when thinking about this war to light. It's a really, really great war film. And I might have been a little bit tough on it with my rating. I gave it a 3.5, which is very good for, in my rating system. But it wasn't quite 1917. And it's weird because there's a lot of things that I do think All Quiet on the Western Front did better. I just think story-wise and the dubbing, less so the story and more so the dubbing, are enough to just kind of dip at that half star. But if not for that, I really would have felt confident giving it a full 4 out of 5. Now, last but not least, the number 1 rated movie on Letterboxd. Come and see the Russian film that covers a child of Belarusia, who gets basically thrust into this war with the Nazis in World War II, and his life completely changes from the atrocities of war. And you get to see this terrible character arc, and it's one of the best films in doing that, because to describe it, it's like seeing a character forever change from a hellish arc, and not in like a Joker way where they become a villain, but he just becomes a hardened person that has to live with guilt, that has to live knowing that there are evils in the world and that they can come to your doorstep. And a lot of, I guess, terrible things happen in the filming of this, where the child actor was actually shot at during one of the scenes, and the stress of the role was taking a physical toll on him. Not for that whatsoever. Had many a discussion with Ethan and Matt, and I'm sure others. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and you can easily get, not easily, it takes skill, but you can get tremendous performances out of actors without having to manipulate them in such a sinister way. Now, was his performance great in this film? It was, and I think there would have been a way to do it if the director was talented without using these damaging tactics. Nonetheless, it's these films, and a lot so, Come and See, show the true kind of unsung impacts of war. I gave Come and See a 4.5 out of 5. It's truly one of the more bleak films in cinema history. Guys, thank you for joining me for this episode, this little wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and check out the Spotify in the link down below. And I will catch you on the flippity flip. Bye, y'all.